guys, welcome into another episode of Artists on Deck. My name is Morgan Tompkins. Very excited today to be joined by artist Blakk. Been looking forward to catching up for a while, meeting virtually, that is. So thanks for your time, man. How you doing?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So where are you located right now? Where is the headquarters that I'm seeing behind you?
Quarantine Central right here.
Yeah.
Hopefully for like not much longer.
Yeah.
But I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay. So has this been
not where I'm from, but where I am.
Right. It's everyone's home away from home at LA.
Yeah, it seems to be so. It's one of the things, like every time I go into anywhere, I think this is like a North American thing. I don't know if you do it too, but I always ask people where they're from, but especially in LA, because it feels like no matter where you go, every single person you meet is here from somewhere to do something.
Right.
So there's that classic LA thing where it's like, hi, and before you even get your name out, someone's like, what do you do?
Yeah, I hear an accent. Where were you from originally? That's
where are you from originally?
Yeah.
But it's really cool because every single person has a story to tell, and no matter, I'm fascinated. I'm like, like everybody. I don't care if what you do. I really don't care. It's like you could be an actor, you could be an actress, you can serve coffee. It doesn't matter. But I'm like, why are you here? What's your story?
Right. And so on that note, where are you from? What brings you to this LA dojo that you reside in right now?
Well, I'm from Canada originally, so I'm from Montreal. But I was living in Europe for 4 years in Germany, and then here I am in LA. So I feel like I've become like quite international. I've like traveled all around. I've been everywhere, and yeah, here I am.
What brought you to Germany?
Well, when I started, like when things kind of took off for me, when I started my career, you know, I got signed and whatnot. And at the time I was living in Alberta, in Calgary, Canada. And I had a keyboard player who was from Germany who came with me and like toured with me and whatnot. And on one of those tours, I met this girl, and I was like, oh, I really like her. And I, started talking and started a long distance relationship. And when I got signed, it was like, where do I want to be? Do I want to be in Calgary, or, my keyboard player's in Germany? And I'm like, I guess I'll just go live in Germany.
Cool. And
so I did that for 4 years, and until I got my heart broke, and then I ended up back in LA. That's the story goes.
Tale. Yes. Such is the tale. You end up in LA heartbroken and ready for the next chapter.
I know. That's what I've been telling people, because when you get talking about your story, it's a really interesting thing because you're telling your story over and over and over again. So you become more and more familiar with what happens to you along your journey, the great things, the hard things, the sad things, the lovely things. Right. But one of the things is like I literally landed in LA with a bag and a broken heart, and I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? And it felt so cliche to land at LAX with that in tow. I was like, oh, of course. And it's like the thing with LA is like you look at the person next to you and like, why are you here? And they're like, oh, my heart's broken.
Yeah. A Bag and a Broken Heart is the album of LA residents.
That's it, man.
I feel like that is like the story. That is the beginning of any great songwriter's journey, right? I mean, that is you arrived in the media capital of the world with I'm sure
with like everything you need to do this.
Exactly, right? Like you need a little pain in your heart and a couple stories to be able to kind of like get all this out, right?
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It wasn't, it's always, the journey of life is always really, it's weird, man. It's just weird. It's like you have these it's like these ebbs and flows, and like you have these high pivotal moments. You're like, wow, I'm on top of the world. And then the only place to go from the top of the world is straight back down to the bottom. It just seems like the speed is the only thing that changes. Like I'm crashing hard on this one.
It finds a way to keep you in check. Yeah. Keeps you in check.
Yeah, if you're looking for humility, just fall in love.
And so going back to you growing up in Canada, I mean, when was the moment that you discovered music? When was the time was there a moment, or was it a gradual thing growing up for you where you're like, I love this, I want to do this, I want to give this a real shot?
I think it was gradual. I know it was gradual. Because I'm not your typical kid in piano lessons or guitar lessons.
Right.
And wow, our kid can really sing really well. It's like that was not even in my scope at all. I started really late, and my story was a lot rough around the edges growing up. And it's not a fun one necessarily to tell, but it's a real one. And I've really used it to empower myself and to do great things with it. But my starting point was pretty sad. I was a kid who was growing up in a really bad situation, and my family really wasn't set up to have kids, and my dad was not a great person and was in the completely opposite end of all good things. He was in the bad side of the world, like gangs and violence and all these things. So I'm the product child of that, and so music was like not even something I even considered. Most of the time as a kid, without trying to downplay it, was like survival mode. It was like, how do we just make it through now? And you don't really realize that until you grow up and you look back and you go, damn, like that wasn't normal. While little Tommy and Susie are like, hey, we're going to soccer practice and we're gonna and piano lessons. Me, it was like, wow, I just saw a gun. Okay. And like you don't realize that. So anyway, the short version of that is, I ended up kind of bouncing around the streets, and my Nana took me in. And I love telling this story because it's just really real. And I showed up at my Nana's house. She got me a train ticket. I was in a different city in Canada, and I was homeless and bouncing around and trying to figure out life when I was a teenager. And like coming into who I am trying to be, like trying to figure it all out, as we all know, is like the messy ages of like, what the hell is this? And I called my Nana up and I was like, hey, I'm really not doing okay. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna get you a train ticket, come to Montreal, and you can stay with me. And I was like, wow. And she made me sign this letter. She drafted up this letter, which was like, all I had to commit to is I'd go to school.
Yeah.
That was it. If I went to school and I did that, then she would give me a roof and a bed. And I was like, totally, sign on the dotted line. And I showed up, and I don't know why she did this, but she came down into, I had like this whole basement. It was like crazy because I went from like struggling and bouncing around couches and like fighting to make money, and like it was brutal, to then all of a sudden having like this space of silence. And it was like this whole basement suite. And I was just a kid. I was 15 years old. And she came to me, she's like, I want to get you something. I want to get you a gift. What can I get you? And I was such a strange question. I hadn't had anybody really say that to me or ask me anything like that. And when I was much younger, I had an uncle who, the last time I was asked that, I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, and I had an uncle who was like, hey, I'm gonna get you a gift. And he opened this like toy catalog, and it had a guitar and a mic, and then there was like an acoustic guitar. And I was a kid, so I was like, I want the thing with two things. So I want the thing with the guitar and the mic. And so they bought it for me, and it was like $5, Fisher Price kind of cheap thing. And I got it, and it broke within minutes. So the second time I got asked this question, the only thing I knew is I didn't want the thing that would break quickly.
Oh, that's so funny.
So I wanted option B this time. So I just had a guitar. And she went to a local music store in Montreal called Steve's Music and bought me this like knockoff guitar, this Sunburst guitar with a white pick guard. I still remember it. And man, when she put that in my hands, it was the first time I felt something inside of me go, hey. And it was like a big question mark.
Yeah.
And it scared me. I didn't really know what that was. So I put the guitar down as fast as I picked it up, and was really kind of nervous about that conversation that had just started in my head. And it wasn't until like 6 years later that I started writing music. Wow. And like actually like taking a look at this under a microscope. The guitar was just more like it was a big question mark. So anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying like, I don't know, man. It came out of nowhere, and it's been gradual, and it's been this conversation in my head. And then now I'm familiar with it. And now I talk to this like thing inside of me all the time. I'm like, hey, what do we want to talk about today? And what feelings are we going through? We can take those feelings and put them into words and melodies, and maybe it'll reach somebody.
Wow. Well, that's an incredible story, man. I appreciate you, telling that and letting us know. I mean, it obviously shed so much light on you and who you are as a person and who you are as a storyteller. I mean, do you feel like those experiences in the past, some of the harder ones as well, have really paved a way for you to be kind of more in touch with some of those feelings that, you're able to get out when you're writing music, and some of the emotions you're able to convey when you're able to, sit there with just that guitar? I'm sure you have a nicer guitar now. There's a couple sitting back there, but is it still kind of, some of those raw feelings that come up from that first time you held it, and some of those feelings that you had back then? Are you able to kind of, have just that moment of you and the guitar and some of those feelings, and you're able to use that as an outlet now for that?
Yeah. I mean, mostly it's just that, I think that like all things, the more you do it, the more familiar you become with what it is you're doing, why it is you're doing it, and how you're going to do it. And a lot of times I feel sad for people who don't necessarily have this outlet. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through some things without being able to express it. So like one of the great things I found with music is that I take these feelings that I have and I'm able to really get them out of me so I can look at them. And it's not that you lose them, you know, like I'm not happy that I went through what I went through as a kid. If I were to pick happiness, are you happy that you went through what you went through? No, yeah. I totally could have gone without it. I'm not saying that that's the thing that like really made me, but what I have done is I have found happiness from the things that I went through.
Yeah.
I found ways to take those moments that were really hard and go, okay, what do you want to do with this? Because I think when I was younger, I always would ask to myself, like, why am I going through this? You know, and it was a small question, but it was an impactful question nonetheless. It's like, I remember Christmas Eve, I was walking down the street, it was snowing outside and I was homeless and I was crashing on a couch and I was really sad. I was really upset. I was like, this is Christmas Eve. And I remember feeling like this is such a time for joy and everyone is joyous. And everyone talks about like coming together and the festivities and love. And I'd never felt more alone in my life because it wasn't inclusive for people like me. It was inclusive for people who had their stuff together, families. And I remember walking by and looking in the windows of houses and going like, wow, I'm totally not invited into this world right now. And that was a hard thing to think and feel. Whereas now I'm like, okay, that was a hard thing to go through, but what does that mean to me now?
Yeah.
You know, it was hard living out of a bag and, you know, going all around and trying to find places to sleep and sorting through that. Whereas now I'm like, oh, it makes total sense. Like I basically live out of a bag for my career. Or it's like those feelings that I was going through. It was really tough to go through those feelings. But what was more tough is I didn't know what to do with the feelings. Yeah. Now it's like, look, even like 2 years ago, almost to the date, I was living in the back of my car in LA. I'd signed a big record deal 5 years ago, and it was, man, wow, what a moment. I was living in Europe and so cool. And I'd played like Red Rocks and got standing ovations and toured with my friends. And this was so cool. But then all of a sudden, here I am, I found myself living in the back of my car on the PCH next to the ocean. And that was my day. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go brush my teeth at Vaughn's. And, you know, I was like, how did I end up here? Like, what is happening? And then I wrote If You Love Her from that and a plethora of other songs. So it was like, it's kind of been like a really cool way of going, okay, like this is happening. What do I want to do with this? Like, it's less about the why and more about how do we use this moment? And I think that's the incredible thing of songwriting is like just taking all that experience and putting it together and going, okay, I'm going to put this into something and maybe someone else out there is going to feel something with it because that's my truth and that's their truth. And then we can connect to it. And so again, less about why and more about like, wow, this is really powerful. This crazy experience of being a musician and an artist and like
the roller coaster ride that it is, you know, and the highs and lows. And I mean, and you mentioned, you know, the song If You Love Her, which obviously is now blowing up. I mean, people are loving this song. I mean, was this a big moment for you when you kind of put this song out, seeing the reaction?
Oh
how did
my
that
God.
kind of come together? First of all,
dude, like
the song and then just the momentum that it got.
I mean, so like I said, I showed up to LA with a broken heart, and I you know, I think part of doing this thing of being an artist, I always remember like looking at other people being like, you know, because you watch, like you'll read a tabloid and be like, this person broke up with this person and this person, and you're like, man, it's really hard. Like, can celebrities just be in love? Like, it's really rare that you see like the Goldie
like bounce around, like, you know, like it's.
And I'm like, why is that? You know, and I'm like such a weirdo with love. I'm like, what's love and what's this mean? Because I've seen the antithesis of it. I've seen the opposite of love. So I'm like, I feel really passionate about falling in love and feeling these feelings. But I'm like, so, you know, my career is kind of doing its thing. And, you know, for a lot of people who do music, I don't, you know, this is going to be old news to them, but like, you know, for people who maybe don't know, a lot of years of just struggling.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a musician, buying a house is a really weird question. It's a big giant question mark. Are you going to be able to do this to buy a house? Because the truth is, it's kind of like an NBA team or an NFL team or an NHL team or anything like that. There's only a certain amount of space for people at the top, you know? So will you ever make it? And everyone else is trying, but it might not be enough. I can't imagine like walking into a bank being like, hi, I'm a musician. Can I get a mortgage? And they're like,
a musician in LA? I've never heard of something like that before.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like for me, it was like, how do I do this? So there's like this pressure all the time of like, man, will I make it? And what's making it mean? Like, will I ever be safe? And what happens is you start dreaming up these ideas. So for me, I was like, okay, like, so I was with my ex and I was like, how do I marry this person? And how do I pay for a wedding? And how do I do this? And what happened was like, my focus went away from the person and was more like fixated on how do I do this? So I started missing, I've been trying to like kind of explain it myself, and it feels like a pyramid and like, or a house of cards, and you're building up to something, but little things at the top keep happening. So you constantly focus on that top part. You're trying to make it make sense. And it feels like a feather can topple you. So you're just like swatting away feathers all the time, instead of realizing what's kind of holding you up is this whole base of people and experiences and whatnot. And so while I was trying to figure out how to buy the house or do all this, kind of missing the small things that really mattered.
Yeah.
And I got my heart broken because of that. You know, when you walk into a relationship with someone and you think forever, and then forever doesn't happen, you have to deconstruct forever. It's not just the person, you have to come back from forever, which is really long. And so with all that, you know, all that to say, put me in the back of my car in LA trying to figure out what I was going to do. And while I was in that moment, I went and I met up with a lot of my friends and just started to write out my feelings. And one of the people I was writing with in particular, my buddy Steve Solomon, who's an incredible songwriter and has become a dear friend. He was there, you know, working on songs with me as it was happening in real time, watching my heartbreak and watching me go through this breakup. And it was very real. Like everyone goes through this. Guys, girls, people of all ages, genders, and things and colors, doesn't matter. Everyone has had their heart broken at some point in time. And if not, it's going to happen. And when you go through it, it feels like the world just stops. It feels like the world is over and you don't know what's going to happen. And you're like, anyway. So I was going through all this, and I was really trying to put like an effort in to see if maybe there was a way to reconcile. And in the process of doing that, I had to learn a lot about myself. And I wasn't upset at my ex. I was like, I get it. You know, you wanted a hug and a kiss, and I was trying to buy a house. I missed it. I totally missed it. But I was like, but look, I know that I missed it. So does that mean that now that I know that maybe it'll work? And sometimes it's a little too late. In my case, it was a little too late. And it took a month-long trip to Australia with her and to try and figure that out. And it didn't work out. So here I am on my second flight back to LA, busted hard again, one bag. And there's this moment of like the question mark of will it ever work stops, and it's more of an exclamation point or a hard period, and you go, okay, it's over. And I remember calling up my buddy Steve, and I was like, hey man, it's over. I'm going to close that door. And there's this beautiful thing for me, at least in that moment, and it's honoring those stories and those people. And so, you know, I don't want to go and write the song of like, how could you do this to me, my heart? No, it was more like, okay, I loved this person so much. I want whoever dates her next, I really want them to know, I want their starting point to be my ending point rather than my starting point. And I just wrote that, and Steve was there, and the song was born within like a matter of minutes. It was literally, and it sounds so cliche, but it literally happened like that because it was so honest. And it was like, this is who she is. And if you get these things right, if you pay attention to those things, she will be the best thing you'll ever have. And I just wrote that. And I remember Steve looking at me being like, what does that mean? Like, what is the, like, you know, she's the best thing you'll ever have, and she'll love you if you love her like that. How do we get to that point? And I was like, this is who she is. And the coolest thing about that is it took this busted heart and I wrote it into this piece. And with a song, you never know what it's going to do. I always write through my feelings, but you never know. Like, I've put out so many songs, I've written thousands of them. And it's like, why is it that one song does something over the other? And
right.
the coolest thing to me is that this is the one that moves, as we say, the needle, because it's like, you know, this person had, like, you know, they wanted the world, and it's like, now this is their, they here it is, like, you know, the whole world gets to know your story, and they feel the same way you feel. And I think that's the coolest part. This, I've been calling it the echo, and it feels like, you know, my my Alexa's gonna go off. And so having it go out into the world, my story, and then to hear it come back, it's like yelling at the mountaintop, being like, is there anyone else out there? And people going, I'm here. And it's been beautiful, because people are like, you know, that's my dad talking to me, you know. And I've had people be like, my dad passed away and he would have said this to my partner.
Right.
This is my girlfriend. This is my boyfriend. This is like, and man, I thought I was alone on that mountaintop. And the crazy thing is, like, it feels like the whole world's on the other side, just yelling back.
Yeah. And I would imagine that's probably such a gratifying feeling for you of where you were writing that, and brokenhearted and feeling lost, and being able to put that out there, and now just receiving so much love because of it. And so many people that are just like, God, this song spoke to me, or this song is now, you know, something that, you know, my significant other and I listen to together, or like you said, a father.
Oh my God, dude, it's crazy.
It's like, I mean, that's got to be just the best feeling for you.
It's wild. It's overwhelming in a very good way, but it's like, I've watched so many people get married to it already.
That's
and
insane.
Like, it's insane. It's so crazy to watch this happen, you know, because it came from such a real spot. And watching all these people, like, people being like, hey man, like, my partner does this for me and they totally got it right. Or I have these dudes writing me being like, yo man, I was getting it wrong and I heard your song, and it's like, that's my girl, and I realized that I need to do it. And like, then girls are messaging me being like, my boyfriend heard your song and he's totally figuring it out. Thank you so much. Man, I needed that song.
Right. I know, but isn't that funny? It's like, past Forrest like needed future Forrest to be to like have this for him, you know. So in a weird way, it's like, you know, even though that may have missed out on you at that moment when you needed it, there may be people that are being saved because of this, because they need
I mean, dude, even myself, like, I'm in an incredible relationship. I've met an incredible person, and she's like, you know, I remember sitting with her one day and I was like, you know, I'm like, to me, you're where if sunset and sunrise can meet, that's where you are.
Hold on, I'm gonna write that down. I gotta.
But that's how she feels. Like, she's such a special color of human. Like, she's so much life in her, and joy, and she feels like this angel, man. And I'm like, I was just so humbled by just being in her presence every day. And it's been awesome, because I've taken the song to heart myself, and I'm like, hey, like,
you're following your own guidelines right here.
I'm like, all right, I can do it right this time, you know. You know, and it's incredible, man. It's overwhelming. It's beautiful. And I love that it came off the back of such a real experience, you know. And all that to say is this beautiful thing. Instead of having like any resent, it's just like to really honor every single relationship, because that was the life of that relationship.
And that's why, I mean, and that's why I think it's speaking to so many people, and why it's got to make you feel so good is because it's so authentic, you know. And in a music industry now, or, you know, with social media and things like that, there's just a lot of shit out there, and a lot of just random things that sound good when you put them together. But then there's authentic music that comes from a real raw place that speaks to people. And I think that, you know, is why this is getting such a great reaction. It's just the world needs that authentic feel, and they found that in this song.
I think so. I mean, look, there's a place for everything. I don't want to go to a club and bump this song, you know. That's not what I want. I want this, like, I take a lot of pride in the fact that, you know, maybe I'm the soundtrack to somebody's memory. That's kind of, if someone wants to be like, who's Forrest Blakk, that's what I'm aiming to be. Is like, I really want to be the soundtrack to your moments. I want to be your wedding song. I want to be the song that you use if, you know, when you're burying someone or falling in love with someone, or like everything. And I think that's what I wanted as an artist, because when I listen to music, that's what I'm doing. I want songs to be attached to my memories, and they are. And like, you know, you have a song with someone because you love them. You have a song for someone you maybe don't like.
Yeah.
You have all these feelings. You got a song for lust and love and hate and anger and happiness and joy. And I think that that's what people want to connect to.
Yeah.
But again, every type of genre and every type of sound has its time and place. Like, you know, you maybe don't want to hear If You Love Her as the song to ramp you up in the Super Bowl. That may not be it. I'm okay with that.
No UFC fighters are going to be like running out the tunnel, like, you know.
If Conor McGregor doesn't walk out to If You Love Her, I'm confused. No, you know what I mean?
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. What was it like for you when you heard it on the radio for the first time, man?
Oh my God, dude, I died. My heart was exploded. So I found out that it was being played in San Francisco, and we're here in LA, and it hadn't been played in LA just yet. And I was like, oh my God. So I reached out to Jane at Alice, and I was like, hey, I'm like super grateful that it's on the radio. I mean, I'm a Canadian kid. So like, one, for people who aren't from America, because even for Americans too, like as a Canadian, the dream is to have your song on radio in America.
Right.
It's like wow, like I did it, made it to
That's
America. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, because it's not like, no, I'm not crapping on my country. I love my country, but someone's like, yeah, I got it on the radio in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's not like people aren't like, it's exciting for us as Canadians. Like I'm equally pumped that it would be on the radio in Winnipeg. But if it's like, if you put Winnipeg and San Francisco, it's a little different feeling. You know?
It's a different vibe. I got you.
Yeah, it's a different vibe. So I'm like, it's on the radio. So I call Jane. I'm like, or message Jane. I'm like, hey, like, can I come up to the station? And it's so backwards. No artist does this, and I know that. But I'm like, can I come visit you? She's like, well, it's COVID. I'm like, I know. I haven't visited anybody. I've literally been in this house for a year. I haven't left. And I'm like, we'll do social distance. She's like, oh man, it's impossible. We can't do it yet. I'm like, totally get it. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to drive up to San Francisco anyway. She's like, you really? And I was like, yeah, a song's on the radio, man. I need to hear it. And so she loved it. And she's like, cool. She's like, she's like, it'll be on the radio somewhere between these two times. And I was like, amazing. So I drove up with my girlfriend. It's the first thing we'd done in a year.
Wow.
And we drove to San Francisco, and we're like, we're going to sleep in the car. We're going to be like, it's just, you know, I'm a Canadian in America. I don't want to get sick down here anywhere for that matter. I'm like, I don't want to get sick. My lungs, I need them. So I'm like, we're going to sleep in the car and we'll do whatever. And we'll make a date of it. And so we drove up to San Francisco, and on the way, I know I have like a super fan in San Francisco. So I reached out to them. I'm like, hey, do you want to come share in this moment? And she lost it. So she came into the city, and we parked overlooking, I think they're called the Painted Ladies. Okay. So like the Full House, which I learned very quickly that I don't know the Full House song. I made up my own version. Of my girlfriend, she laughed at me. I was like, anywhere you go, everywhere you die. She's like, what are you talking?
I'll be that's not the block if you need it. It's like, that's close.
Yeah. She's like, that's not the lyric of the song. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And so anyway, so we're looking at the Painted Ladies overlooking San Francisco, and I decided to just live stream it because I really love my fans, like more than anything. I consider them to be my family at this point. And they've been watching this whole ride. And I'm like, they need to see this moment too. This is the first moment. You only get one first time. Right. And so I put on live stream, and then my fan Marie was across the street in her car looking at us. And then it all happened, man. And I knew I was going to get emotional. I'm such an emotional dude, but I broke down, man. I was like sobbing because like when I think about this whole journey, I always think about me as a kid, and like, what would I have thought if I knew that all that stuff I went through was going to do this?
Right.
What would I say to myself 2 years ago in the back of that truck on the side of the PCH overlooking Malibu and the ocean, being like, oh my God.
And that's what I thought of, like, when I first heard that. I'm like, you know, this full circle moment, you got to drive down to the PCH while your song is playing in LA and just be like, and just have this full circle kind of powerful moment with this whole thing. And like the fact that you stuck through this and telling that kid that was going through those times up there, like, it gets better. Like, it does get better. I promise it gets better, you know?
Yeah. And that's what it feels like, you know? And it's just, all of this is just super overwhelming, you know, or even like it's, you know, now it's on radio, and then it's like charting on iTunes and charting on the radio station. charting, and like I was number 8 yesterday on the viral charts of Australia, and I'm like, I wrote on my Facebook, I was like, this is like pretty much a full circle moment, because I literally went to Australia for a month to see if I can reconcile with my ex, and like it didn't work, but Australia has this like feeling now attached to it for me, which is really beautiful. And for it to be like going viral there, I'm like, what is happening? Or like, you know, here I've written it in LA, and like it's like, what is happening, man? And every radio station I've spoken to is like, so has anyone like big slid into your DMs? And I'm like, I haven't had like a really great story, like nothing. Like I'm like, everyone's cool who's like in my DMs, but then all of a sudden it's like a random Thursday or Friday, and like Meghan Trainor slides into my DMs. Is like,
that was gonna be my next question. Like, how did that come together?
The craziest thing, literally. So I've literally answered this question everyone. I'm like, nothing really exciting. It's cool. Like, I mean, everyone again who cares about the song is cool to me, but I'm like, because I think they're looking like, who's the biggest celebrity and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm so oblivious. And then, but Meghan Trainor is like a name I obviously know. And then, so here's Meghan Trainor sliding to my DMs, and she goes, oh my God, I'm your biggest fan. Or yeah, and I'm like, what is happening? And so, and then she's like, I love this song. I recorded the second verse. Send me your number. I'm going to send it to you.
Dude, that's insane.
Yeah. And I'm thinking this is maybe fake. I'm like, maybe this is not real. So I'm like talking to my girlfriend. I'm like, I think Meghan Trainor just messaged me. I think Meghan Trainor just gave me her phone number. I think I need to text Meghan Trainor.
What do I do?
What do I do? I'm like freaking out. And so I text the number, and it's Meghan. She's like, yo, my whole family loves this song. I love this song. This is incredible. Here's the song. I wrote a second verse for it. And it's recorded. And I was like, what just happened? So I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I have a song with Meghan Trainor on it. I'm like, this is crazy. This is super crazy, man. Like this isn't like, I don't even know how to process this. And within a week, the song was there. It was done. I was like, this is like,
and now it's taken on a whole different, you know, it's a whole different beast now.
Well, it's just another chapter of the story, because, you know, like I see If You Love Her in a lot of different ways. Like I've put myself into it, but I think once I've written my like subjective experience into a song, it's not mine. It's for the rest of the world to feel how they want to feel about it. But one thing I've always thought is like, If You Love Her is a series of like me shouting out from the top of this mountaintop. And it was cool when Meghan took over in the second verse, because it's an answer.
Yeah.
And I always felt like, I always heard If You Love Her as a potential duet. So I was like, it'd be really cool to have somebody being able to answer back in this thing, because I think a lot of people feel this. And then I've watched people on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the whole 9 yards. People have been saying the other side of it. Yeah. So it's really powerful to have Meghan write into that and put that out into the world. And I love the response, because again, it's like this song works in so many ways. Like you can switch out the pronouns if you want. It still feels equally as powerful. And I've like thought of like, maybe I should do a version like that, you know? And anyway, it's just, man, it's mind blowing. I'm overwhelmed. Like, as you can tell, like I'm super pumped about it, super passionate about it. I love that it's out in the world. I love that it's taken so much of a life by itself. And I love that it has its own thing. Like I feel like this will outlive me, and I think that's the most powerful thing as a songwriter. I'm like,
I mean, I wrote some evolution of the song. It's taking on different forms, and like I said, long after you've moved on to new singles and new albums and everything like that, this song will always be there and always, you know, have this impact on people. And I'm sure always be a really special song for you, as kind of what catapulted you to this kind of.
I'll never be able to not play it. I already know that.
Yeah. When you're playing arenas one day, people will riot if you don't play this. So
yeah, like that. Imagine like if like I'm gonna pull up like Kanye. I'm just gonna play what I want.
Yeah, right. I know.
Or like Radiohead when they don't play Creep. It's like,
he's going rogue. We got to bring him back in. On that note, do you have, I guess, a favorite part in the process of making music? So whether that's, you know, I got an idea here, I'm kind of, you know, writing stuff down or taking notes in my phone, putting together the melody, spending time in the studio, you know, producing it, getting it right. You know, I know that the final form is, you know, playing it live for an audience, getting that energy back, which I'm sure is incredible. But do you kind of have a favorite part in that process of making music from start to finish?
Yeah. Dorothy Parker, I think, said it best. She goes, I hate writing. I love having written. And and I feel kind of like that. I don't hate writing. I think that there's this like torturous thing about writing, and it's really beautiful. And so like, I'm gonna sound like a bit of a weirdo hippy dippy dude out in LA, but I've felt like this for a long time. I don't know where songs come from. I don't know where they come from. I don't know how I hear things in my head, but I'm really lucky, and I do. And I've called it my muse, and I think my muse is female in nature, so I call it her. And I hear her talking in my head, and I hear these like whispers of melodies and words that'll pop out attached to feelings that I have. And I feel like she'll give me little bits of things. So like when I listen back to the recording of If You Love Her when I started, so for me, I don't like write pen to paper. I don't write, like people always like, do you write lyric or melody or this verse? I literally will pick up an instrument and then I just start. And I just let it all out. I don't know what's going to come out. I don't know what melody. I don't know what words. It's just going to blah. And so with If You Love Her, it's like literally within like a minute and 15 seconds, I can hear it being born.
Wow.
And it's the coolest thing. And I always record what I do. And I love going back and hearing the process. It's really special. I try and get out of the way of doing anything myself and I let it just happen.
Yeah.
And then what the job is taking what comes out of that, and for me at least, and working to try and best represent that feeling in my head of what I'm hearing. And I don't always know the yes part, but I usually know what the no is. I'm like, no, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. And I don't feel like I don't feel okay until I work it out, you know, until I'm like, oh, that's the right way of the reordering the dictionary. That's the right line, you know, and that feels what I'm trying to say. I'm such a stickler for it. Like I'll record songs with people sometimes and then be like, I know I just left the studio. It's been 5-10 minutes, but I was just listening to it in the car and it's not the right word, man. It's the wrong word. And people are like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's the way it goes.
I'm turning around, open the door.
I'm turning, yeah. And people are like, okay.
Yeah.
And like the more I've like worked with people like over and over again, the cooler it's been because then they accept it. And they're just like, let's run with it. But with If You Love Her, well, I mean, all songs the same. I don't know if I necessarily love the whole process. I'm in love with the process, but I love when a song is done.
Yeah.
And I go like this.
Boom.
And I sit back and I feel like I'm in such awe and amazement at the fact that just me, this blob of water, walking around on this giant rock, floating around a giant gas ball in the middle of nothing, came up with something, or maybe not even came up with it. I don't know, just channeled something, and I put it out into the world, and then it connects.
Yeah.
And I think to fully answer the question, I think my favorite part of the whole process is when someone reaches back out and says, I hear you, or I see you.
Yeah.
And then I have, not to be prophetic by any means, but I love this exchange between other people, because I remember that version of myself walking down that street on Christmas Eve feeling alone.
Yeah.
And when you put a song out, it doesn't matter what day it is, you feel invited.
Yeah.
You feel very visible. And I try my best to like, I always know where I came from. I always know who I am. And I remember that I'm part of the riffraff. Yeah. I'm the underdog.
Yeah.
And I just love making everyone feel as visible as I'm being made to feel.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of it. I've talked with, my friends and my managers and everyone. I'm like, if not for this, then what was it all for?
For sure.
And so that comes back to that question earlier. Like, going through all the stuff I went through, if it wasn't to be used for this, then I don't understand why it happened.
Right. Yeah. It all sets you up for this moment, and leads me to ask what's next for Forest Blakk. I mean, we're obviously as a nation, as a country, kind of looks like kind of getting out of some of this stuff, where maybe there'll be some shows to be played soon. I'm sure you like most of us spending so much time inside, but seeing this track take off, I mean, was it like, God, I can't wait to get out there and play it for the fans and really kind of have the experience of like a song charting and the fans loving it? So obviously you've been making music. What's next for you? More music, playing shows? I mean, what's something you can't wait to do?
Man, I just can't. I want to go home and hug my Nana.
Bless your Nana, man. Hey, I don't know if we would have this music without her, so bless her heart.
100% would never have happened. Like she's everything. I mean, even I named my guitar after her. Like I love it. So she's my hero. look, I definitely, that's a true thing, that I definitely want to go home and hug my Nana. It's the first thing I want to do. But everything, I mean, that connection, I've been in a box for better part of a year and a half, and I miss people. I played my first concert this past weekend.
Wow.
Which was incredible. And it was only to like 12 people. It was a small, super intimate, like, COVID safe event. And it literally felt the same as playing a stadium at this point. I was like, wow, so stoked to, like, I love doing the live stream stuff, and I'm really stoked to be
it's a whole different, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, like I lost my voice. Like I was like, just played for 2 hours. I was like, I'm not gonna stop playing. Yeah, look, I was supposed to tour the Goo Goo Dolls and Lifehouse, and then, and then Blue October, and, like, I'm so eager to get back out there. I was supposed to play Red Rocks and the Greek and everything in between. I'm supposed to play home in Canada. I'm at this point, I would love to get out on the road if it's safe to do so, and play for every single person I can. And ultimately, I'm the weird artist who goes to the merch booth at the end, and I don't leave until everybody's gone. I just love meeting people. I love connecting with people all the whole way, from the cafes and diners that you drive through on the way to the next show, to the people that work the shows, and to all the fans that come out.
Man. It really does. I mean, just having that relationship, like I said, with the fans connecting like that, it's very important. Do you have any LA shows that are coming up soon?
Nothing that's in the books. Like, everything is up in the air. I think Goo Goo Dolls just postponed until 2022.
Okay.
So that, like, I'm not too sure. I don't even know what the world looks like. It's been a weird time to have a song do what it's doing, because I don't even know what that looks like. Like, to me, I'm still the same dude I've always been. And I don't know, like, I haven't noticed the impact yet necessarily. But the thing is, like, a lot of people know my song now, and I haven't been out in the world to notice that yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to walk out into the world and people are like, you're the dude that wrote that song. So I don't know if that's going to happen, or if I'm still going to be like, nobody notices me anymore still.
Right. Yeah. It's like, going to be interesting as we all kind of come out of this shell we've been under for a year and a half, and kind of figure out where life stands and how long it takes for it to feel somewhat normal again. But I'll be first in line if you're playing a show out here in LA again. I mean, I'm sure people can check your socials for you posting stuff when that happens.
Absolutely.
I'm bummed I missed whatever show you played. Was it last night or last week?
No, it was on the weekend, but it's okay. I was up towards San Francisco. It was in Santa Rosa.
All right. So when you play some shows out here, man, I'm gonna be there, and I appreciate the time, brother. Just taking the time and telling your story, man. It's been very impactful, and it helps us kind of piece together this incredible artist. And I wish you nothing but success, man. I know this is just the beginning, and you look happy and healthy. You're in a good relationship, in a good space, and I know this is just a starting point for what's next for you, man. So I can't wait to see what you got coming up next.
Thank you. We'll see, man. Lots of music, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Had a year to write. So
it's sitting on a bunch of stuff here.
A lot of stuff. I know.
Of course, Blakk, appreciate the time today, brother. I hope we can connect again and see you in person soon. I can't wait to come out to a show.
Anytime, any place, man.